Look at me, surely. I'm the captain.
Captain James Howe!
Ahoy there. Welcome to Rated Aargh. Thank you for joining us on another adventure as we chart our course to the realms of cinematic piracy. Today, we take a look at one of the most realistic sailing epics the world has ever seen, Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. My name is Ryan, and please join me in welcoming my co-captains, Christian and Braxton. Guys, how's it going?
Great.
I mean, this is a good movie.
I really enjoyed it. I've seen it before, and it's one of those, every time I rewatch it, I go, oh my God, I forgot how good that is every single time. And I want to rewatch it now, but I probably won't for another 5 years, but I should.
Yeah. This is my first watch. I think in my Letterboxd review, I said this is not the kind of movie I would normally go and watch. But it was good. I mean, I'm just not real drawn to like period pieces like this. Like it was pretty slow. It's kind of just like, this is life on a ship. This is a little slice of these guys' lives, basically, in movie dramatized form. But like that's from everything that I've seen, which the amount of information on this movie is kind of overwhelming, like how much there is out there about like the movie itself and like the accuracy of it. But from everything I've seen, like this is a super accurate movie. And I mean, they knocked it out of the park, man. Like it makes living on a ship look very terrifying.
Yes.
Like for a long period of time. So especially the storm stuff.
Yeah.
It just looks terrifying. Christian, you seen this before?
I had a long time ago, I think 2018. So it was really nice to refresh on it because it's it's a great movie, but I guess when it came out, kind of in the shadow of the Lord of the Rings that also came out the same year.
And a ton of other movies.
And a ton of other stuff. Yeah,
Pirates
it's
of the
been kind of
Caribbean, Curse of
suppressed.
Black Pearl. Yeah. Well, this is a 2003 movie, which is just an insane year.
With this one, I was super impressed with not only the historical accuracy of it, but how far they went with a lot of the stunts and a lot of the like physical, practical effects of it. In my mind, it rivaled a lot of those Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yeah, it's right up there with all the stuff that they did for the movie, you know?
Yeah.
And how it looks good in the context of the movie, you know, everything that they built.
Yeah. I mean, super, super cool. So Master and Commander, Far Side of the World was released on November 14th, 2003, had a budget of $150 million and a box office of $211.6 million. Opening weekend brought in $25 million and was the number 5 movie in November of 2003, according to Box Office Mojo. And while this was a big movie, it was likely overshadowed by many of the releases surrounding it. A few of them that I was looking at that kind of stuck out to me that were around the same time, kind of October, November of 2003. School of Rock, Kill Bill Volume 1, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Radio, Scary Movie 3, Brother Bear, The Matrix Revolutions, Love Actually, and Elf. And Love Actually and Elf were actually both released the week before this movie. Okay. And then it also was competing with Looney Tunes Back in Action. Came out the same weekend. So there is that. And
Love
for the year,
that movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie. For the year 2003, Master and Commander is the 33rd ranked release by Box Office. This was originally intended to be the first film in a franchise of movies, but because of the low box office numbers, no sequels were ever made, despite critical acclaim and multiple Oscar nominations. And I did see something where there's a potential like prequel to this movie that has been in development since like June of 2021, and I think in October of 2024, someone picked it up. So I don't know if that's actually like going to happen or not, but
right, yeah.
But that apparently is something that is in the works. So I thought that was kind of cool. And speaking of Oscar nominations, Master and Commander won 2 Oscars for Best Cinematography for Russell Boyd, who's the cinematographer on this, and Best Sound Editing. Richard King was the sound editor on this. and it was nominated for a total of 10 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Film Editing, Best Art Direction and Set Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. Alongside this for Best Picture were The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Lost in Translation, Mystic River, and Seabiscuit, with The Lord of the Rings winning Best Picture and every other category Master and Commander was nominated for. So all of 8 other ones that they did not win, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, won all of them. It's kind of crazy.
Oh my gosh.
It just shows like how crazy that movie was, that year was, that this is a Best Picture nominee. Rightfully so. It's a great movie. But Lord of the Rings just kind of swept. So it's one of the ones that's like won the most Oscars, right?
Yeah, it is. It still is.
Yeah.
I forget what it's
crazy.
tied with. Like, I'm not going to say because I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it's tied with 2 other movies with 11 Oscars.
Okay. 11. Dang, that's a lot, man.
That's
That's a lot. Wow. Critically, this movie was well received. It has an 85% critic score and an 80% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. It is a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, and it is a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So, pretty good ratings. Probably one of the higher, like across the board that we've done, especially lately. I mean, we did The Abode last month.
This is a big change from The Abode.
This is definitely.
I would say near the opposite.
Yeah, this is definitely a step up from The Abode. I mean, I don't know. This is leaps and bounds above The Abode. So.
What if Russell Crowe looked right at the camera and was like, "Where the pirate Redbeard once lived"?
That would be insane. It'd be insane.
That was in the bloopers. But.
I mean, surely there's some similarities between, like, Russell Crowe and this crazy
Yeah,
pirate
yeah.
guy,
There's the
but-
part when Paul Bettany was like, "I get off of my land." Okay, we have to stop referencing The Abode because no one's gonna know what the hell we're talking about.
Hey, man, if
Because
they
we're the
watched
only
the
people who've
episode
watched
last
it.
month, then they'll know. If they didn't, they should just go watch that episode because the movie's not worth watching.
Exactly.
I have a
CBD.
log line looting from Apple TV. This one actually have 2. One is from Disney Plus as well, which is like notorious for having terrible ones. But the first one, this one is from Apple TV, and it says Captain Lucky Jack Aubrey is a renowned fighting captain in the British Navy. But when his ship, the Surprise, or the Surprise, as I like to call it, the whole movie, is suddenly attacked by a superior enemy, Aubrey is torn between duty and friendship as he pursues a high-stakes chase across 2 oceans to intercept and capture his foe. With a badly damaged ship and an injured crew, this mission can save his reputation or destroy them all.
That's not a bad logline, but I'd say that's too much information. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's still pretty vague in terms of like what happens in the movie, but it's a lot of information.
That basically is kind of what happens in the movie because there's
Yeah.
not much, fundamental stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would argue it is better than the one from Disney Plus, though. And this
Okay.
movie, I could not actually find listed on Disney Plus when I just Googled Master and Commander. Watch, I think, is what I typed in. Like, Disney Plus was an option, and the description was in, like, basically the description on Google. So when I actually clicked on it, it didn't take me to anything. But the description for this movie on Disney Plus is: a young captain of the British Navy leads his crew on a mission to take a phantom French vessel.
What the hell does that even mean? Oh my god!
Yeah,
Freaking Disney Plus.
Disney. Whoever writes these for Disney Plus,
AI probably
kudos to
writes
them.
it.
I mean,
AI probably writes it.
I want to like applaud them for giving the worst log lines that have ever been written. I mean, I don't know that you could get a more vague description even from AI. Like,
That's
it's
not
like
even vague though. It always makes it say, but that's not what it's about.
Well, I wrote a replacement one. I guess I'll reveal it at the end, but I do think it is better.
No, just go for it now. Just go for it now.
Okay.
If you got it ready.
Master and Commander, alternate logline. I forgot what we started calling that.
I think we just called it Christian's log line.
Okay. 2 bros take the ultimate cruise. One wants war, the other wants birds. Neither get what they want, but everyone gets scurvy.
Fantastic.
Just, even if it was
great.
just the first sentence, the two bros go for a cruise.
Yeah, I thought that's where he was going to leave it for a second. I was going
Even that is amazing.
Up. Oh, it's great. Christian's just the master. You should write descriptions for Disney Plus. People would probably watch the movies more. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it's just a fantastic log line. Before we get too far into this, Braxton, do you recommend that people watch this movie?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you could probably listen to the episode without it because there's not much. I don't know. It's not really a spoilery type movie. When we talk about the plot and what happens in it, I think it would be still enjoyable to watch.
I think there may be like one thing that we'll talk about briefly that would be a spoiler, but we'll maybe say that this is going to be a spoiler beforehand.
Yeah. But as far as recommendations, I definitely take the time to watch it. It's worth it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really, really solid.
She master,
please
on my
stop.
commander till I go to the far side of the world. All right, I'll see myself out.
So Master and Commander of the Far Side of the World is based on two novels, Master and Commander and The Far Side of the World by Patrick O'Brien.
When I read this, I was like, oh, yeah, it's a series. And then they said there was 20 books, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this dude wrote 20 books?
I don't know, man. And this is like, apparently it doesn't really follow either book. Like very
it's kind of an amalgam from what I understand. It's
kind of like they took bits and pieces from both of them and kind of wrote their own story based off of those. So like names are similar, sort of things that happen in the books I think are similar. But for the most part, like this is just an original screenplay that's based on some other information that's in these books. There were two historical advisors that were on set at all times is something that I saw. So Christian, how historically accurate is this movie?
I am probably not as highly regarded as the historical consultants they would have used. But from everything I looked up and everything that I saw, I think this is one of the most historically accurate movies ever, with like Nolan level attention to detail.
Yeah, and I think that video that I sent you, like this is a guy that's which I don't know. I didn't cut any clips out of this, so we may briefly talk about it. I think the channel name is History Hits. Literally, if you just search Master and Commander on YouTube, this should come up. But they have like a Napoleonic era. I think specifically he dealt with like naval history. That, you know, like he said this is one of his favorite movies because it is one of the most historically accurate movies that has ever been. Like, and not even just, you know, the time period and all that, but like the things that, like the little details for things that happened on the ship. I think he said was like just incredibly accurate. So I thought that was pretty cool, but I mean, it's like a 40 minute video, I think. So like, if you want to go look at that, you definitely can. But I mean, for him to that kind of be a specialty and be like, this is my favorite movie because it is so historically accurate, I thought was pretty cool.
That's a big deal. Yeah.
That's saying a lot because, I mean, so many around the world are so obsessed with Napoleon and Napoleonic history, the Napoleonic Wars. It's said that Napoleon, there are more books written about Napoleon than any other historical figure on Earth in history, except for Jesus. And so you're talking about like the most studied historical leader maybe ever, most studied wars ever. And so when you make something that involves that time period, there's going to be a lot of people that are interested in nitpicking. I think that happened with the most recent Napoleon movie. But this, for it to like get through all that unscathed, you know, they did their research, they got the right consultants, and they actually spent a lot of time making sure the right pieces were in place to make it look pretty accurate. But I've seen a lot of commentary that it is like the most accurate depiction of what sailing was actually like at that time.
It's really cool. Yeah. Speaking of the Napoleon movie, I'm not trying to sidetrack us too much. Like if you haven't seen it, it kind of dives more deeply into like his love life, I would say, more than anything else. Which
but
I
that's
mean,
not even accurate in any way.
Well, I don't necessarily know that it's not accurate as much as it is like you should have called it something else. I feel like people were expecting a Napoleon movie, like for him being a conqueror and going out and having all these battles. And like even this, like if they had made more of a, this is Napoleon, which I don't know how much he sailed, probably very little, because I think most of his battles were like on land, weren't they? What he was actually involved with. So I don't know how that would have translated, but if they had made something like more similar in style to this, instead of making it, you know, so much about his, I feel like it would have been a huge success. But instead, you know, we were kind of all disappointed.
Master and Napoleon, the far side of the bet.
Yeah, I'm not a big history guy, so like I know like little things about Napoleon, not a whole lot. But
he was actually average height for the time.
I mean, that's what I've heard.
That's the funniest Napoleon fact. But he had a giant ego, and these are the jokes.
One of my favorite things is to just not laugh at your jokes.
I know, because I love it. I love it when I bomb. I love it. It's funny to me. But something I also loved was the hour-long like DVD special feature for this movie that someone uploaded to YouTube.
Oh, you did go and watch it?
I watched it during lunch at work today, and it was very interesting. It was, again, it's probably like rest in peace DVD special features. Like they were some of the greatest things ever. But in it, they gave a whole lot of detail on, you know, how they adapted the books and, you know, the actors and stuff. But what I was most interested in is they, for the 200 people on the ship, they had 25 what they considered to be, you know, primary characters, which makes sense when you kind of think of all the different faces that you see. Yeah. But then they had 150 like permanent background actors or extras. But they weren't just random people. They were people who were specifically hired to be the background actors of the crew. And all those people went for a 2-week like boot camp where they learned how to sail. And what I found interesting...
that's including the main...
Yeah, including the main cast.
Yeah.
And like another part of it when they went there... Sorry. Someone farted.
No, Christian moved his AirPod and there was a squeaky noise.
I know, but it sounded like a little like I was really trying to push past it. I was really trying to, but I couldn't. The fart side of the world. They during that time when they got there, they had different colored shirts. They had different colored shirts for their rank. So for the upper rank people, they had a certain colored shirt. For the midshipmen, they had a colored shirt, and then for the regular people, they had a different one, like a white.
That was
shirt.
Russell Crowe's idea as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing! That's a great idea." You know, to where like you're not in your wardrobe, but even before you're in the full wardrobe, you're getting it into your brain of, you know, basically the, you know, naval traditions and all that type of stuff. So
yeah, and I'm sure that helped a lot too with just like, you know, organization during that training. I'm sure that helped so much.
Well, and two, he was like, anytime that you guys are in the background of a shot, like in other movies, like you can fool around and just do whatever. He said, well, I want you to fool around and do whatever, but I want it to be like you doing your actual job. Like you're not doing nothing for no reason. You're doing not character work, but logically, you know, if you're the, you know, the guy has to be, you know, steer the ship or, you know, lower or raise the mast, you're over there doing that task, and it looks like you're really doing it because you are, which is a whole different thing to most movies. Basically, most movies it's like, yeah, the background people, you know, do whatever, no one's really gonna look at you, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know if it talked about this in the DVD. Did you watch the commentary or like a behind the scenes like featurette kind of deal?
It was like an hour long like featurette.
Okay. I don't know if it talked about this, but it said that shooting took up nearly 100 days at the Baja Studios in Mexico, but they did actually spend 10 days at sea, which I thought was interesting.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah. The main tank where they shot was the same tank that James Cameron built for Titanic.
Yeah. I saw
which is kind of funny.
It's kind of cool too.
I was because they mentioned several times the different types of ships.
Mm-hmm.
Like that always has confused me. Like even once I've looked them up, the ship that the English are on is a frigate or something else.
Yeah, the frigate would have been the small one, and you have different descriptors used depending on whether it was the Spanish, English, or French.
Okay.
Or even by this time, the U.S. Navy. You might have had different descriptors for ships. But the interesting thing was that the French ship, and this was also pretty accurate, it had nearly double the firepower of the British ship, and it was also quite a bit faster. It was actually modeled after an American ship called the USS Constitution.
Isn't that the one that's still around?
Yep. It's in
like that still exists?
And then they modeled that little model after that.
And then they used that model from 2003 to rebuild the ship that exists. No, they didn't. But
and there's an interesting video out there that talks about how they made it and how it was so advanced at the time. But this was like at another kind of advancement stage in shipbuilding, to where the previous ones had been made of a certain type of wood where if they were hit with a cannonball, they would often splinter. They figured out if you kind of compress two different types of oak together, a cannonball can bounce off. And so the French ship was actually modeled after those first few kind of reinforced hull ships that were coming out at that time that were nearly impervious to British weaponry. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's a great part where Russell Crowe is like, what does he say? I'm not going to remember the exact line, but he basically, after seeing the ship, he comments on like what an advanced age we live in. That's his commentary in 1805 on the new ship technology, which is a great line for us like that, today, you know.
He's full of great lines in this too.
Oh, he's so good. He's so good. He's very charming. It shows how good his acting is, because this, I mean, you could argue like that. Yeah, it's similar to Gladiator, obviously, because he's in like the leadership role, but it really is a completely different character than Maximus and Gladiator. It shows how good of an actor that he is, I think.
Yeah. This one he's on, you know, at sea instead of in an arena.
Right, that's the main difference.
He can't reach down into the water
and pick up
be like, do his ritual.
Yes. That's the only difference.
Captain Aubrey's character is actually pretty closely based on a real guy. His name was Lord Thomas Cochrane. And he himself, the real guy that he was based on, was accused of piracy at several different times. But they actually modeled a lot of his warfare tactics around this captain, this Thomas Cochrane, because he was known for disguising his vessel as a merchant vessel, disguising it as a whaling vessel, and using that as a way to get closer to French ships and attack them, or whoever they may have been at war with. So that was really interesting. He becomes one of the most decorated captains in England, and then within a decade, he is accused of some pretty nasty stuff. His court-martialed, has like everything stripped from him. He's still a hero in England, but he has everything stripped from him. And then after that, he kind of is a hired gun, using his services for different revolutionaries. There were actually, even though this was not a pirate movie, there was a lot of piracy going on at this specific time. Because in 1803, France and England had gone to war. And so by the summer of 1803, when that news had reached the Caribbean, a lot of the privateers for both England and France were given instructions to take each other out, whether that's attacking each other's islands or attacking each other's shipping lines, just trying to take out as many English or French ships it may have been. There's a lot of bad blood between the privateers at that time. in the movie, the French ship they're chasing was a privateer, so it would have been given orders to attack certain locations, bring down any ship with an English flag that you see, and they were kind of doing really well at that job. The French were really dominating a lot of the Caribbean at that time. But it gets into a lot of piracy because technically as a privateer, the way it worked was that you would go out and you would either, it may have been a violent command, like to blockade some port. If it was like the British sugar island of St. Thomas, you may have been under orders to blockade that island, not let any of their sugar shipments back to England. Or you may have been under orders to capture a bunch of English ships because we just want them gone. And the way to legally do that was, even though piracy had really gone down since about the mid 1700s, privateering was alive and well. And the way that worked was that they would go out and capture a ship, and they would have to take it back to another French port if they were French privateers, or another English port if they were English privateers. And then there is what is called an admiralty court that would have to judge based on the orders that you were given, papers you were given, the records of the ship. They would have to judge on whether that ship was taken legally or not. The issue was, in the Caribbean at that time, a lot of islands were actually benefiting from not having them go through this entire legal process. So a lot of the French privateers were actually engaged in piracy at that time, specifically taking it places like Cuba, where the ships would just be sold, the men would be put in Cuban prisons, the British sailors would be put in Cuban prisons, and the Frenchmen would be fully engaged in piracy. So even though this movie, there's no mention of pirates, I without a doubt would say that the majority of these ships that were given war orders quite often went beyond those bounds to where probably the majority of them could have been receiving of a claim of piracy at one time.
And I guess the difference between like privateering and piracy would be that if they steal goods from another ship, one privateering, they would be returning those to like their home country or something versus keeping it for themselves. I mean,
sort of, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, they would get a cut, I think, but essentially, it would be going to the government as like taxes, in a way.
And it was
Which
because
is- which is legal
goods
versus
ship.
if they keep it all themselves.
Right.
It's okay.
And the goods ship had changed. It was no longer Spanish vessels like loaded with silver and gold. It was a lot more shipping goods, or there was a lot of value in bringing that British ship into port and just selling it, either scuttling every single thing off of it or just selling it to a new owner.
Or making it part of their
Or making it part of your own. Yeah. So many British and French ships went
went back and forth.
Yeah.
Is that what happens at the end? Sort of.
Yeah, in a way, because they're going to take the French ship back to, some port, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen with it, but we assume that, maybe it'll be part of the English fleet. Maybe they'll study the technology of it. Maybe they'll sell it. But basically, it's England's property now, not France's. Legally, especially because they're not just privateers; they're the Navy.
I mean, we'll get into it. I'll probably say this again before I give my ratings. But when I was thinking about my ratings earlier, which Braxton, if you haven't thought about them yet, go ahead.
I already. This is the only time that I have in like the 20 we've done. I thought about it beforehand.
We haven't done 20. This is number 14. But so I actually Googled the definition of piracy just to see what exactly it says. But the definition of piracy on Google, which I'm guessing this would be straight from like the dictionary, is the practice of attacking and robbing ships at sea. So that's specifically what it said. I mean, you see piracy in other ways, like on, DVDs
You would download
and
a
stuff.
car.
Yeah, like on DVDs and things like that. That's like, hey, like don't copy this and then sell it. Like that's illegal. But yeah, I thought that it was interesting that it was specifically when I just Googled like piracy definition, that's the one it gave me. But I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, like this movie is sort of piratical in nature due to a strict definition of what piracy is. Because they do attack a ship, and the other ship attacks them. So there is like a mutual attacking going on. But they do attack a ship, and you could say they rob them. I mean, like I just said, they
do talk about taking their gold and stuff.
Yeah, and but they also just take the whole ship. So,
yep.
I mean,
the only difference is the two individual crews on the ship are, they have the backing of their countries that are at war.
Yeah,
that's the only,
I know
distinction.
Yeah. So I don't know. When I was going through my ratings earlier, I was like, I mean, there's not technically anything like too piratey happening. And then I was like, well, let me look up just a strict definition of piracy and see what it says. I think it's more piratey than we think, probably.
It's not a black and white issue. And then at the exact same time, the U.S. is like 30 years old. And so a lot of the world's superpowers, the U.S. employed its own privateers. And then if an American ship attacked a British ship or a French ship, the British or French would be like, the United States, that's not we know you guys want a war, but like that's not a real country. Like be serious. And they'd say, we don't recognize that country. And so you're not legal privateers right now. We think you're a pirate. And so like if you were, a lot of the people, Cochrane that Aubrey is based off in this movie, he had a nickname, La Loup-Garou, which to the French meant the wolf of the sea. He was like notorious for being in smaller ships and still winning them. He was like super cunning, super fast. He had been accused by the Spanish and the French of piracy, even though he was under legal orders to advance the English crown. If he was captured, it depends on. Oftentimes, like history will say if you were a pirate or not, depending on who is writing the history, whether you were captured or not. Because if he's not captured, he's fully acting legally. But if he had ever been captured by a Spanish ship or an English or a French privateer, they would have said, "Yeah, we're going to have you hanged. We're going to have you executed for piracy. You're going to be charged with this." Just because what you are doing is not seen as legal in the eyes of our government. So piracy versus privateering, it's this entire gray area because you've got these revolutionary governments giving out orders. People are constantly at war. People are constantly going beyond what they were told. Another interesting thing in this movie is they had gone all the way to the Pacific from where they had started. What had happened a lot of the time was that these battles would spill over well past when the war had ended, well past when their letters of marque would have been rescinded, when the orders would have been obsolete. And so then you have to make the argument of, well, it's 2 years after the war had ended, you still obliterated this French ship. And so that to us is an obvious act of piracy. You could say, well, I had no idea. If you're captured by the French, they are not going to listen to you saying,
right. And that's what's crazy. And maybe it's just because I knew that about history. I don't know. I swore there was a part in this movie where like they got like some other information where it's like, oh yeah, like the war was over like a year ago, but that didn't happen. I like imagined that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember that either.
Maybe I imagined that because like I thought about that what you said, Christian, about because they take so long to go around. Maybe I thought like when I watched it the first time, I was like, oh yeah, like I wonder like if they're even still, at war like these 8 months later or however long it is, because they wouldn't.
It's crazy that triad of England, Spain, and France over a period of like 300 years,
just beating the crap out of each other.
These two were allied against this one, and then all of a sudden, 5 years later, they would switch up.
Dude, when you, Ryan, you saying you not know that much about Napoleon and stuff. Like there's YouTube videos that simplify it, but it's still like freaking hilarious because they call it different coalitions, different like basically the Napoleonic Wars went on for like 10 years, but like every year or two there'd be a different coalition where like people joined other teams, and the more you look at it, it gets funnier and funnier because like wait, I thought last time that they were against but now they're, and it gets comical to the point of people like switching sides. And then eventually at the end, it's everybody against Napoleon because they hate him. And that's why he lost, because everybody was like, yeah, this guy, he keeps turning us against each other. Let's just attack him.
Yeah.
And then Napoleon was like, Sacre Bleu. He said that.
I'm sure he did.
That's true.
So one thing that I thought was interesting, and I said something to Braxton about this when we watched this the other day, is that they had kids on board, and that was one thing that that guy, the historian guy in the video, talked about was they had got a lot of kids. Usually it's like 9 to 12. It wasn't uncommon for them to have like several children on board, and I don't remember really seeing too many children on board in really any of the pirate movies that we've seen. And when we see like one in Treasure Island, and there's maybe like one or two in a couple of the other ones that is, like a child that has lost their entire family. And so the pirates like take them under their wing and they become part of the crew. I don't remember seeing, which I know this isn't technically a pirate movie. This is a pirate adjacent movie because they're technically part of the Navy and they're just sailors. But I was surprised at how many children were in this movie and like part of the crew. And it was interesting to me that Captain Aubrey's almost like a father figure to them in a lot of ways. And they kind of really look up to him and like want his approval. Because you see, like, if they don't, get their way, they're upset. And then he's like, okay, well, like, but I have other plans. Like, you're here for a reason. And then when we like towards the end, one of the boy that had his arm cut off is upset because he's going to be on board. He wants to be part of the boarding party. And he's like, okay, but when we board the other ship, like you're now going to be the acting captain. And he's like, oh, well, hey, that's pretty cool. So I thought it was interesting to see like the dynamic between, the children, and it's almost like a teacher and a student relationship more than it is like a father and son in ways, I thought. But I didn't realize that like there were that many children sailing back in the day. Is that pretty common?
Yeah, for a number of reasons. You might have had different reasons. A lot of the time is in a lot of ports you would have had no shortage of kids, either orphaned or in poverty, just looking for an escape. There was forced conscription where they would, it's a lot easier to like forcibly abduct an 8 or 9-year-old kid than it is a fully adult man to do the more kind of tedious labor things. A lot of them were forced into servitude for cleaning or some of the more dangerous jobs. I know that in the Royal Navies, it was actually somewhat common for them to be in charge of moving boxes of powder. That was something called a powder monkey, because they saw it as a lot more beneficial to, if a powder box explodes, they would lose a young kid, not this able-bodied adult sailor. And so, there was a lot of kind of unethical reasons for it. There were a lot of ethical reasons for it, where they would take kids in. There was one Puerto Rican pirate. His name was Roberto Governaci. He's called kind of the Robin Hood of Puerto Rico for several different reasons. One, he was said to have attacked Spanish ships and distributed wealth, but also he was said to have given opportunities to kids that didn't have it elsewhere. So were very young, they were kind of recruited to become members of these pirate fleets and actually like make money for themselves, make money for their families. So for a lot of people, it was the only way out. But it was pretty accurate that you would have a pretty good group of kids. And in the 1671 raid of Panama, when Henry Morgan sacked Panama City with about 2,000 men, a pretty large chunk of his army that was like going across, marauding, sacking, pillaging villages in Panama was children. And that just sounds insane, but like it happened.
Something else I was looking up here that I was going to look up, but I didn't until just now, but it is fascinating to me because it's mentioned a little bit. Paul Bettany's character mentions it when him and Aubrey are having the argument, like the bigger argument about, do men need to be governed? What's the right way, that thing. And then Paul Bettany throws out that he said most of these men are, have been impressed into the Navy. Basically, impressment was basically like you were stolen and forced to be a sailor in the Navy for a period of time. And that did happen. But what's interesting, there's a bunch of really interesting stuff in the Wikipedia article here. But basically from like the 1600s through the 1800s, there was no like concept of you join the Navy. There was basically this thing called the impress service. Their job was to go around and find. They wouldn't just take a random guy off the street. They would find like actual sailors, but they would take those sailors and be like, "All right, you're yoinked, and you're going to go on this ship for a year and be in the service of the Royal Navy because we said so." And notably in the Magna Carta, where we learned about that in school about gave rights to certain people. There's a notable part in the Magna Carta that says, yes. The Magna Carta is the powerhouse of the cell. That's what I remember. And hold for laughter. And in the Magna Carta, there's a specific line that says that failure to allow oneself to be pressed was punishable by hanging. So you exclusively, as a sailor, did not have the right to not be impressed into the Royal Navy. That was a right that they said you didn't have. You had to go. But basically, even at the time, it was like controversial. Like there was riots and other stuff that happened from people, not wanting their villages people, forced into the Royal Navy. So in 1805, when this movie took place, there's an estimate that the 120,000 sailors that were in the Royal Navy, there's an estimate that over half of them were impressed into service.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Something even crazier was there was a supposed war from 1739 to 1748 between England and Spain, and you will never guess what the name of that war is. In 100 years, you would never guess the name of it. You want to know what it is?
Yeah, go ahead.
The War of Jenkins' Ear. They would fight over anything, those damn English in Spain. At the drop of an ear, they would fight. At the cut of Jenkins' ear, they would fight.
Oh, my goodness. Well, one thing that I really was impressed with in this movie is Aubrey's character. He's very likable. He's very quick to make usually the correct decision most of the time, it seems like anyway. And he somehow always finds a way out of things. And I think one thing that I thought was really interesting was when, the kind of the opening of the movie where it's really foggy, they're having trouble seeing, and one of the guys thinks they spot a ship. He's like, okay, well, we're just going to be prepared. And they just go into like defensive positions. Even though the second guy didn't confirm that he saw anything. The first guy wasn't even really sure that he saw anything. And then they, get fired at and ultimately like put the lifeboats in and row the boat back into the fog. And that was one thing that I thought was kind of impressive with him is, a lot of, not necessarily the captains that we've seen in other movies, but I would think as a captain, where I put in that situation, my instinct would be, or at least my pride would probably get to me and be like, no, we're going to turn around and fight these guys right now. go ahead and get this over with, which ultimately would have probably doomed them. And I was impressed.
Prepared.
Yeah, and I was impressed that not once, not twice, but like 3 or 4 times they evade the enemy in some form or fashion by some cleverness that him or someone else on the crew is able to dream up. I think one of the more impressive ones is the decoy that they set. And I don't know, did you get a clip of that, Braxton?
Not the decoy, but I do have a clip of the very first scene when they get fired upon.
Okay.
Which you do get to see the captain take action.
We can take a look at it in just a second. But I thought the decoy one was really cool. And I know that was one that we were pretty impressed with when we were watching it the other day. It was like, oh, what are they doing? Like, they're just going to send this young boy out in a raft to be fired at. And then you see the flames and the lanterns lit and extinguished on the ship. And, I mean, it fooled them. It worked. It was really ingenious, I think, to think up something like that. It was really cool. I thought that scene was very impressive. And I was, I think that's probably why his crew respects him and really looks up to him a lot of the time in this, is because like he seems to make the right decision over and over again, and he's not going to endanger everyone's lives for his own pride, which I thought was pretty cool.
I love the
fog
delay.
in this movie is pretty crazy too. Like, it's just so thick at times. Jeez. The damage that this cannon fire does is crazy too.
Yeah, it's scary the way it's coming up out of the fog.
Well, and that was one thing that I know the historian guy talked about that was really good about this movie was, like, in Pirates of the Caribbean, when they fire cannons, there's an explosion. Like, these are just balls. Like, they don't explode.
Aye, sir. Mr. Allen, come up on the wind. On the wind, sir? Lay me alongside a pistol shot.
He's already giving orders to every single...
Sharpshooters to the tops, Mr. Howard. Aye, sir. Sergeant, take your section into the main top. Stand tall on the quarterdeck, son, all of us. Mr. Boyle, run up the colours.
Aye, sir.
Run up the colors. The first scene's great, man. Like, it kind of sets the tone for the movie.
Yeah.
I think one thing that they talked about in that video as well was just how accurate the dialogue and like the commands that he's giving to the crew would have been at the time. Like, run up the colors, things like that. Like, those are things that actually would have been said on a ship from a captain to someone in the crew. And you don't always see that in some of the other ones. Like, a lot of people would be like, hoist the flag, or, raise the flag, or something like that, instead of run up the colors. It's a really good opening scene. And that clip only gives you like a little piece of what that whole scene really entails. But I think like the suspense of like, oh, did he actually see something? Because it's not just immediately revealed. Like, until those cannon shots are fired and you see the flash like in the fog, like you like, we at home sitting there like know there's a ship just because it is a movie. But I mean, it's pretty crazy that scene unfolds the way that it does, because I feel like in another movie it would not have been, them firing from the fog, or, oh, did we see it? And it's kind of drug out a little bit and kind of, held the tension there for suspense. Like, did he actually see a ship? Is it a threat? Like, what's going on? And then it's like, oh yeah, they are. They're definitely a threat, and they're shooting at us. And not only are they shooting at us, but they have really good aim, which is something that they talked about multiple times in the movie, was just like how good that the like cannoneers, I guess, were for the French ship.
The other thing about the captain is he loves a good pun. And if you want, we could watch that clip right now.
Before we start this, I do have something else. So I did see... because that is one thing. He's like very punny, it seems like, a lot of the time. And that is something that I think Russell Crowe kind of maybe took to heart, was like, I'm going to make him as funny as I can be. Does he give us toast in this clip as well?
No.
So at one point in the movie, he gives a toast, and he says,
just before this.
He gives a toast to wives and sweethearts. May they never meet. And apparently, that is the traditional toast for Saturdays in the Royal Navy. Like, I think that was an actual thing.
What?
That was a tradition in the Royal Navy, was that was what they said.
I like that.
Yeah, pretty cool. This is a clip, though, very similar setting. In fact, I think maybe that is said
it's the
like
same
at
dinner,
the beginning of their meal. But this is another great example of Captain Aubrey's humor.
Do you see those 2 weevils, Doctor?
I do. Those 2 weevils.
Which would you choose?
That's such a weird question to ask someone to. Which would you choose?
Coolio. If you had to choose, if you...
He's already laughing, watch.
Yeah. Which I guess this is sort of like a play on him being a naturalist.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah, this guy would be super interested in weevils. He could choose one.
Significant advantage in both length and breadth.
There, I have you. You're completely dished. Do you not know that in the service, one must always choose the lesser of 2 weevils?
Damn it. It's his face.
One must always choose the lesser of 2 weevils.
But the way he can't even finish saying 2 weevils, the way he goes, 2 weevils, and starts laughing. It's beautiful.
Yeah. He knew this one's going to get the laughs in the theater.
Yep.
That's a
weevils, get it?
It's a great joke. I mean, it made us laugh.
And then what is the other? Does the other guy say he who would pun would pick a pocket? Is that what he says?
Something like that. Yeah, I don't exactly know what he says. But yeah, pretty good joke. I don't know who came up with that joke, but it's great. Don't you know, in the service, one must choose the lesser of 2 weevils. Oh, it's a great line. It's a great line. We did talk like just for a second about the ship, but the production for this actually did use 2 ships. One was a replica of a ship called the Rose, which was an actual ship, I think, that sailed around this time. That's then dressed up to be the HMS Surprise, which could be put to sea within 45 minutes at any time. And the other one that they used was a replica of the replica that was built on a gimbal in the giant tank at the Baja Studios, Mexico. And construction of that replica took approximately 3.5 months. And the ship, the Rose, that they actually bought for this, I think maybe the director found a ship and learned that it was for sale, and they bought the entire thing for like $1.5 million. And then I think afterwards, the San Diego Museum or something along those lines, like actually purchased the ship. So I think you could maybe go still see it if it's on display. So that was, I thought, was kind of cool. They did do the 2 week.
Anything those early days of eBay.
They did do the 2-week boot camp, and in addition to learning how to sail, Russell Crowe also learned to play the violin for this movie, and he referred to it as the hardest thing he's ever done for a role.
I'm sure. Having to learn the violin. Oh my God.
Yeah, pretty crazy. This is the first movie to ever film on the Galapagos Islands, which is really cool. I didn't.
That wasn't a documentary.
I didn't realize they were actually like in the Galapagos Islands when they filmed that.
Yeah.
I think there's maybe this shot of them like watching the iguana swim I saw was like a green iguana that they dyed black to match. They didn't actually film that while they were at the Galapagos Islands. But I thought that was an interesting thing that this was the first movie to ever be filmed like in the Galapagos Islands.
I think the giant tortoises was actually there.
Yeah, I'm sure. It was a really cool setting too. Like one of the more unique, I think, that we've probably seen in a movie so far. Just like really cool. I don't know. I'd like to go to the Galapagos Islands at this point after watching it. I was like, that'd be freaking neat. So, and the bird he was after is a cormorant, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah. What is his name again? For some reason, it's slipping my mind.
His name is Steven. I don't know if they mention his last name.
They do not. He has a last name, but they do not actually mention it in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't.
And he's the ship's
Yeah.
head doctor, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And he's also a naturalist, which when I learned of that, I asked Braxton, does that mean he like doesn't shower? But I think you said at the time, it means a guy who's like really obsessed with nature.
A natural
in general.
scientist.
Yeah, like bugs and insects.
That
And
collected specimens and studied them.
yeah, like reptiles and animals, amphibians, all that stuff. Like he was big. Was he into plants too? Not really. Mostly just animals.
He did collect some plants, yeah.
Walking
Because
stick.
that's mostly what they brought back. Because they had the walking stick, but he also had a couple actual sticks of plant samples in his pockets that he took out.
Yeah, I thought that whole scene was really cool, and it took some convincing for him to actually like be taken there. Like he had to be shot. He had to be shot for him to actually get to step foot on the island.
Yeah, yeah. Which that's a great turning point in the movie because it basically, he discussed it with him. They had the argument about, is it Jack's pride that's leading him to chase this ship? Is it, what is it really? And there's the great moment of him looking through the spyglass at the sails, and it's not just as a favor to his friend. He's thinking about his friend's life, and the likelihood of being able to do an operation on his friend who has been shot. And he has that moment where he's like, that's not the ship, when he knew it probably was. And it was basically him deciding, no, it's worth it to go ashore if I can keep my friend around. Yeah. Because if I don't, then what's even the point of chasing around this friendship?
I think the big like deciding factor for him was when he walked into their like music room and is like,
he saw the cellos there just sitting,
and he saw the music and he was like, oh man, like who's gonna play music with me now? And he's like, oh, maybe I should just do what's best for my friend, which ultimately was cool.
Ultimately works out because you
that
get
was
that
one of my
great
favorite parts of the whole movie.
Yeah, you get the great moment of him looking at the beetle and then these tortoises are so cool.
Dude, they're so cool. So cool.
I like that it's just letting him measure it.
I mean, they do, man. Tortoises are super chill. And the Galapagos tortoises are huge, so they're like extra chill. I think they're endangered as well, if I'm remembering correctly. Because you, like, even go into a zoo or something, you don't really see Galapagos tortoises all that often. Most of the time, they have like redfoot or sulcata.
Naval discipline doesn't operate out here, Mr. Blakeney. I must find that cormorant.
This is one of my favorite parts of the whole movie as well.
Yeah.
You can join me at the Royal Society dinner.
I found this more interesting than them sailing.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Well, that's what's great is because his character and what he does is just as well played and as interesting as the captain.
Yeah.
And they work well in that dichotomy, I
agree with that. Makes us climb up the hill. Doesn't find his bird. Looks over. Is like, oh crap. What's the significance of him catching this beetle?
I don't know exactly. I mean, because it's the same beetle that the kid gave to him on the ship. And the kid comments, hey, you could walk across the whole island and never find this thing. And then he did find it. I don't know. But that shot, and then the music coming back in, and his face, the acting here on his face is amazing.
Yeah, super cool.
He's just like, ah.
You got to be kidding me. And then they ultimately, have to like offload like everything that they've collected during the time that they've been going around the island and have to try to make it back, which he's still injured at this point. Like the fact that he walked all the way across the island to go pick up all this stuff is crazy to me. But yeah, that kind of ends his journey across the Galapagos Islands, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I love that scene, dude. I think that's probably one of my favorite of the whole movie. And you said something about the score there coming back in. That was one thing I wasn't quite sure about at the beginning, because it probably takes, what, like 20 minutes for you to hear any score? Like the whole like
The
opening
first
sequence
time there's
and
music,
first
I
battle
think,
and
is
everything.
when they play their instruments, and then it then turns into score of them repairing the ship.
Yeah.
The whole first like 20 minutes,
Yeah,
if not
there's
more,
nothing.
there's
It's
not
just
anything.
it's just ocean sounds and cannon fire and speech. It was really cool. Very
works
it makes
well
it very
in the
intense
movie,
too.
because when the music does come in, like in that moment we just saw, it makes you go, oh, you know,
Mhm.
as opposed to
Yeah,
if
I
it
thought
running
that
through
was
the whole
really
time.
cool. For some reason, I'm thinking when Christian and I talked about this on our way to go watch Sinners in 70 mil, I could have sworn, and I said this Braxton the other day, I could have sworn that you said this is like a movie famously known for not having a score. Am I thinking of the correct thing?
No, that was No Country.
No Country for Old Men was the one you were talking about? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But I would not doubt if this was one of those to where it was so atmospheric that it had a very limited score.
Mm-hmm.
And when the score was in there, it was that much more impactful.
I mean,
Yeah.
it won Best Sound Editing for a reason. Like, it's really cool. If you cranked your surround sound up, it might feel like you're there.
Yeah, the cannon fire and stuff and the explosions are great. Well, that's what's crazy is like the when it gets to the final scene, it's so like anxiety inducing the way like it's edited and stuff. Like it made me more like this than so many other like movie or like battle scenes in a war movie. Just
Yeah.
the way the sound was and the way the visuals are, and the fact there's so many freaking people right up close to each other. It makes you go like this the whole time, because you're like, any of these main characters could die, and a lot of them do, and
Yeah.
it works well. And especially in antithesis to all the hanging out with the boys vibe of the previous part of the movie.
Yeah.
And then when
Two
they go to
bros
the
going
battle,
on a
you're like,
cruise.
oh dang, it's
Two
real
bros
now.
going on a cruise.
Yep.
So one thing that I thought was, in addition to the sound being so cool, was like the actual ships themselves. Like, I know they were real, but part of the reason that they look so good too is that during the film's pre-production, the replica of Captain James Cook's ship, the HMS Endeavour, was circumnavigating the globe at the time, and the production was actually able to fly 2 cameramen to the ship as it was about to sail around the bottom of South America, which is a route that the HMS Surprise takes in the film. And that makes the footage of the stormy seas from that part of the voyage, those are genuine. Like, there was actually a storm that they were on, which I thought was crazy. And the Endeavour sailors, they actually had them dressed in costumes that they kept on board for displays during that. So I thought that was pretty cool, that they actually went and like shot footage of a ship. And in addition to that, Peter Weir, who's the director, actually went and shot footage of an actual typhoon specifically to be used during the movie. So, I mean, we kind of talked about it like while we were watching it, how crazy some of those like ocean storm scenes look. There's a reason. There's a reason that they look so good.
Also, for being not that violent of a movie, there's lots of blood in it,
Oh, dude, there's
like
so much
slung
blood.
around.
There's so much blood. They literally cut off a child's arm
Yeah,
in this movie.
this is the most French man I've ever seen.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Before the captain died, he said I was to give you this.
I will say, like, I know they won an Oscar for sound editing. It's really freaking good. Like,
Yeah.
even this, like, it sounds like you're inside the ship. Like, you can hear, like, the water just a little bit in the background. Really cool.
I met that doctor. I spoke to him.
No, he died of fever months ago.
Divini.
Again, the acting is amazing.
Pass the word for Mr. Mullen.
That doctor gave me this sword.
I was not expecting there to be a twist ending at the end of this either.
Change of course. Southeast by east. We'll intercept the Aargh and we'll escort them into Valparaiso.
Aye, sir. Southeast by east.
Right. He wants to question it, but he's like, nope.
Yeah.
Beat to quarters.
Very good, sir.
Well, and I think part of the reason that this has the ending that it does is because they were trying to make this a franchise of movies.
Subject to the requirements of the
So it kind of
it
would've-
works as a little bit of
it works as just like a cool ending to this one, but it also works as like setting up another movie.
right. We could continue going on with this.
Stephen. The bird's flightless.
Yes.
It's not going anywhere.
The bud's flightless. It's not going anywhere. And then they play their violin. I thought it was interesting how much that they play it like a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the cello at one point, he just picks
it
up and lays
plays.
across his leg and plays it. Like I can't think of another time in a movie where I've seen anyone play a violin that way. Like typically,
what's
they're
interesting
playing
is
with the bow, like nice.
the way he's playing the violin right now, because the mandolin.
Mm-hmm.
A mandolin is exactly the same length of the neck and the way you shape the chords as a violin. So
really?
interestingly, him just sitting here doing this, that violin became a mandolin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's probably
cool.
how the mandolin sort of developed. Is like, what if I'm sitting here playing this violin like this. What if we made the
Yeah.
instrument that just does that?
What if I just didn't want to use the bow, bro?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what happened if your bow breaks?
Yeah.
And you don't have any horsehair to replace it? Well,
You're just screwed. Just screwed.
I don't know. I think this might be, which I haven't seen him in a ton of movies, but I think this might be my favorite role of Paul Bettany. I think he's great in it.
Fun fact, he's the only one of the crew that did not get seasick. Because apparently when he was young, he was in some group, which I think was called like the Sea Cadets.
What the heck?
I don't know what
I don't know what that was.
Hello.
But yeah, apparently Paul Bettany, when he was young, was in some kind of like sea group called the Sea Cadets or something. I think that was what it was called. I did see something about that earlier. He was the only one that didn't get seasick, which I think like is kind of a joke compared to like the movies and maybe like how he actually is supposed to be in the film. Is like realistically like he is
the least
probably the least like
seafaring man. So to speak.
Seafaring, yeah. And then
That's funny.
he's actually like the one that didn't get sick. So
I have one more pirate fact from this movie. So the admiral that this is based on, Thomas Cochrane, that Aubrey's figure is based on, he was a legend around this time period, and eventually court-martialed. England kind of kicked him out, so he started being involved as a captain in different Latin American revolutions. He specifically winds up helping Brazil win independence from the Portuguese. When he seized a Portuguese ship, the Dom João VI, in 1823, he, from this, made them surrender a shipment of gold, silver, and valuables worth over about 600 pounds at the time, the equivalent of about tens of millions today, and was accused of piracy because there was a large portion that was not brought back to Brazil.
That's just a little off the top. Come on, guys. We do have to do pirate bingo. Master and Commander. So more than you would think. Rum. They say mate. There's a sword fight. There's cannon fire. I marked that there's an R because even though no one says it, Ryan pointed out that the kid wrote AARH to write down the sound that the seal made. That the seal said R. The kid wrote that down.
was
I
it
was like, okay.
AARH or ARGH?
It was not spelled exactly like we spell it, but it was spelled like a seal sounds.
Oh.
So I wrote, instead of an X on my sheet, I put seal. Kiss from a Rose. There's obviously the ship. There's a mention of a curse. when they talk about the Hollins guy and them being superstitious. There's a parrot on the shoulder of one of the Brazilian, like sales guys who are selling them stuff. There's the Royal Navy.
There's also a monkey.
There's also a monkey. I marked that down. There is at least one guy. I think the old man, I believe, had a West Country accent. They do steal another ship. They sing several sea shanties. There's a boarding party. There's a map. They do say the word pirate at least one time. They do say it. They raise the sails and the mast. There's an unnecessarily shirtless guy on the crew. And there is a Captain Crunch hat, which is the bicorn that Captain Jack Aubrey wears. So for being a movie not explicitly about pirates at all, it is very, very high ranking among the bingo board.
Let's go ahead and get into our ratings. So our rating scale, if you're unfamiliar, this is your first episode. First of all, thank you for joining us. But we do have a rating scale called the Pieces of 8. So we rank them on a general rating of what we think about the movie from 0 to 8, as well as a piratiness rating, which is also 0 to 8. Christian, do you want to start us off with the ratings?
Piratiness, I will give this a 5.5. Because although there is not a lot of piracy in it, these types of ships were the exact types of vessels that were actually engaged in piracy at the time, whether they knew it or not. And it was a time to where privateering had brought back a lot of piracy in the Caribbean and around the Americas. And so I thought it was a really cool look into the actual structured naval part of that world. As a movie, I will give it a 7 out of 8.
All right. I would give the pirate score a 4 out of 8, a good 50%. Because even though there's not much substantially with it, all the other trappings and stuff that we're used to, and I would argue even more, real historical detail about the time period, what we typically talk about, it's probably the strongest among that category. So that's why I'm giving it a 4 out of 8. On the overall score, I give it an 8 out of 8. I love this movie, baby. I love it. And I want to rewatch it more. And I think it's underrated. And yeah.
So for my general rating, I give this a 6 out of 8. I think it's a great movie. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So this kind of fell like sort of in line with that. I don't know. It was real slow for the most part. There wasn't just a ton of stuff that happened. I'm not super big on like historical like pieces like this. I enjoyed it. Thought it was good. Oppenheimer, I was kind of surprised that I liked as much as I did. And I think a lot of that has to do with the editing and some of the other story lines that go into it. Plus, there's a freaking nuclear explosion. So there is that. But there's some awesome cannon fire in this as well. So, I mean, with the action scenes, I thought were fantastic. Like, I don't know how exactly that they did some of the stuff that they did without people getting injured. I guess CGI, maybe. If it's CGI, it looks amazing. Like for 2003, it looks absolutely incredible. But it's really good. It's a really solid movie. So 6 out of 8 on the general rating for me. And then once again, definition piracy, the practice of attacking and robbing ships at sea. I gave it a 6 out of 8 for my piratiness score.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of, there was some swashbuckling sort of at the end where they're swinging along, boarding party. I thought a lot of the cannon fire and like the actual battle scenes were really cool. You get a glimpse of like how life on the ocean would have been, and that's not something that you necessarily see in a lot of the other pirate movies. You see it briefly in maybe a couple others, but it's not that detailed. To this, I feel like, it did lack a little bit of like the robbery and the curses and some of the other things that we kind of relate specifically to like our pirate movies. Like I said, kind of gray area. They did sort of rob that ship at the end. So, but I thought it was really, really good. I thought it was a very strong candidate to almost be a pirate movie. Like this may be the closest pirate adjacent movie to a pirate movie that we've watched.
Yeah.
And there were a couple things that it was lacking, but it's really solid. And I mean, just from I was surprised at how many pirate bingo that you pulled up a second ago.
Yeah, for real.
There's a lot of stuff on there. So I gave this one a 6, which, you know, is a pretty solid rating actually in terms of like pirate movies. I'm pretty sure there's pirate movies that we may have given less than that. I mean, The Abode was like a 1 or something. So, and that was sort of a pirate movie. Like there was a pirate in it. Even though I would, you know, never want to call that a pirate movie. I would say that there being a pirate actually in it makes it more of a pirate movie than this in a way.
Yeah.
But it's just bad. So this one, I mean, miles better. Really enjoyed it. Piratiness, pretty solid. Much higher than I expected it to be for sure. I was thinking going into this with it just being kind of a sailing movie, it would be like maybe a 3.
Yeah. I do have a proposition. You can tell me what you think.
Okay.
About what's our museum thing? What's it called?
Christian just calls it the Hall of Fame, but it's the Rated Aargh Pirate Cinematic Universe.
Okay.
The Rap Queue.
Oh no, the Hall of Fame.
Much like the MCU, but for pirate movies.
But my proposition is, you know, maybe this isn't, you know, like you say, it's everything that a pirate movie is except for not being one. So maybe we shouldn't put the movie in. But I would propose that inside the little museum case, we should put the HMS Surprise, the ship inside the museum.
Yeah. Well, we've picked a prop from a few of them, so we could put the Weevils right next to the CBD.
Wait, what?
He said we could put the Weevils next to the CBD. The CBD's in our Hall of Shame, though. So.
Hall of Shame, yeah. Or maybe we should put a biscuit with the Weevils beside it, because if that's not representative of like, you know, that era, I don't know what is. Maybe we should put the Weevils in there.
I told Ryan when we were on our way to see the movie that for some special, whether it's like a year or 2 year, whatever anniversary is, like have a special where we come up with a short that we've written incorporating what we've learned about scripted pirate movies. And I said, we have to include a brief cutaway to a CBD commercial.
Absolutely. A little piece of every
yeah, a little
and
piece
that
of
will be
everything that we've learned along the way makes a good
yeah.
pirate movie.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I don't know that makes a good pirate movie, though, is the problem.
Oh my God. Or that would be the first thing someone sees when they watch the movie, like the fake trailers in Tropic Thunder. There's a fake trailer for a CBD oil, and then it gets into the actual narrative. That's
maybe. Yeah.
But
that
anyway.
That might could work. So I'm guessing if we're only inducting like a ship or something in, we're probably not inducting this in the Hall of Fame, but I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. Should we induct this movie into the Rated Aargh Pirate Cinematic Universe?
I don't know the rules anymore. Sure. Yeah, I think it deserves to go up there with the other ones that we put in. I think it does.
Yeah, sure. What the hell? Let's do it.
We're the ones who are making this shit.
Is this more piratey than Sinbad?
Oh, you son of a...
I mean, that's the line, because that's the one that we had the most debate over.
Sinbad is more piratey than this. It doesn't get to go in.
Then it doesn't get to go in. I mean,
it doesn't get to go in. Nope.
I mean, that's probably the one that we were most heated about.
It was
whether Sinbad should get in or not. And I feel like it's probably the closest to that threshold of getting in.
It is. And I now that you've changed my perspective, if Sinbad was that close to getting in and it didn't, there's no way Master and Commander should get in. There's no way. We'll put the ship in, but that's it. Or the Weevils. Okay. The Weevils riding the ship. That's it.
I know, and it's weird seeing that one of them is on this trajectory, and it's actually about the subject material of this podcast, but horrible CGI.
Yes.
And then this one is vaguely related to the subject material of this podcast, but really cool.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and we found the intersection. The intersection is no, it does not belong in the Hall of Fame.
It's right outside the door on the wait list.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm kind of fine either way. I would vote probably no.
Okay.
Even though, there are a lot of like pirate themes in this. There's no piracy, and there's technically not a pirate either.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why I would vote no. Because I would say Sinbad is very similar to this in terms of whether it should get in or not, which is partly why I brought that up. Because they're both sailors, and Sinbad kind of almost gets viewed as a pirate because they think he stole something, even though he didn't, and he's actually kind of the hero at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's real confusing, which I think is partly why it shouldn't have gone in the Hall of Fame.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. I respect it.
So I don't know. I think this is kind of in the same boat as that.
Yeah, it is.
So I vote no.
It's in the same boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you say, it's just outside the lobby.
Honestly, there's enough
and
to
then
talk
the crew
about in this
goes-
movie. We could record for 2.5 hours, but
Yes. It's a very detailed
Yeah.
movie, which is why it's
Yeah.
good. I'm glad we watched it.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. Good recommendation. Was that? I don't remember which one.
I think
y'all
that was
Put
mine.
this one on there. Probably.
Because when we first started, I was like, oh, that's a good one that's not quite there, but we have to do it. Because it's so good.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was fun. I had never seen it before. It was a really good movie. We didn't watch anything really with too much actual ship cannon fire during the battle, but definitely go watch this movie if
sure.
you haven't seen it, because that's worth watching the movie. It's some of the best, I think, cannon fire back and forth between ships that we've seen in a movie so far. So, and we've seen some good stuff. I mean, the stuff in Cutthroat Island was really good.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they had some really cool shots in that one too, underneath the ship. So, yeah, a lot of fun. Enjoyed it. It's almost time for us to take this ship to port, but before we do, we wanted to make sure you found our proverbial message in a bottle detailing next month's movie of choice. So coming June 10th, we will take a look at 1973's The Pirate, which I think is a kung fu movie, right, Braxton? Sort of.
It is. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll have a great time talking about The Pirate. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We hope you enjoyed Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, and we can't wait for you to join us on our next adventure.